What supervillain has the most logical reason to be evil? Story 1 Sabretooth, maybe. Once his mutant powers manifested, and after accidentally killing his brother, his father chained him up in his basement. And not only would he physically abuse Victor on a daily basis, believing that Victor's powers were the work of the devil, but he forcibly removed Victor's now fang-like teeth. Unfortunately, due to Victor's healing factor, his teeth would regrow and would be yanked out over and over and over again for years before Victor broke loose. Story 2. This has always bothered me, but in the story of Jack and the Beanstalk, the villain has his house broken into and burglarized. Then when he confronts the thief, he is murdered and the thief is rewarded. I mean, what the actual crap? In the earliest tellings, the giant, whose name is Blunderbull, was a villain because his wealth and bounties were stolen from the world below him. He used his immense size and strength to take any or everything he wanted, including eating people after running out livestock to steal. This makes Jack a Robin Hood type anti-hero, reclaiming the wealth that belongs to man, and ultimately stopping any future pillaging from happening again. The vaguely related character Jack the Giant Slayer, on the other hand, totally killed several giants in violent ways, and the later giants only show up to stop Jack from killing their kind. This version of Jack is totally a villain who happens to murder people we don't get along with, aka the Giant. Story 3 Dracula from Castlevania. They killed his one true love, then spat on her memory by calling her a witch. He went way too far with his, but I can see why he did the things he did. Honestly, I see Dracula, a depressed man that no longer knows how to live with it. If he actually wanted the extinction of humanity, he would have gotten it, but he never wanted it. He lashed out and was ashamed of himself. When he first learned that his wife got tortured and murdered, he went berserk and did something his wife would never have approved. He went too far, and he can no longer take back what he did. Now all he has left is shame and anger. Shame because he became what his wife hated and tainted her memory. He feels he no longer deserves his anger because of what humanity did, but mostly what he let himself become. So now he is stuck in a predicament that he doesn't want to face. Admit to himself he doesn't deserve his, suppress all those thoughts, and live in ignorance of what his actions meant. Continue his revenge as if it was for his wife. He chose to, but he always knew what he had become and was just waiting to die. He couldn't let go of the anger, and he let it he lost to humanity because he let anger and guilt in my opinion, it wasn't logical as to what he did. I'm not saying humanity didn't deserve to die. They do. Well, the ones in the anime did, but Dracula was never meant to be the one who does it. Story 4. If we could consider him a supervillain instead of a minor inconvenience, Dr. Heinz Doofenshmirtz. Neither of his parents showed up to his birth. He was raised by ocelots, forced to be a garden gnome, forced to wear girl clothes to school, and he just wanted to be good at kickball. But the only reason he's trying to take over the tri-state area is because of a sarcastic comment on a terrible date with Linda Flynn. Story 5. Zod from Man of Steel. It is, by definition, the most logical reasoning, as he was simply doing as he was innately programmed to do, prolonging the Kryptonian race by any means necessary. Even if some Kryptonians have to die to see that goal fulfilled, the end goal is the logical, this is for the people as a whole. No moral quandary, no vendetta, at least not until Jor-El came back and started messing with it, or until Cal took away his one chance to actually fulfill his goal. Just the pure, logical goal of, I need to save my people, and this is the only course of action that will save them. Story 6. Anakin Skywalker was kind of sad. He envisioned his mother dying, but he saw he was too late to do anything and couldn't stop it. Then he had the vision of Padme dying. So, of course, since he loves her so much, he'd do whatever he has to do to keep her alive. So with Palpatine messing with his head the whole time, he gets him to believe he can keep her alive. And before this, Anakin talked about wanting a new world order, something like that, like a dictatorship. So he basically made the best of it and went with it because he knew he and Padme could live a comfortable life after the Jedi wouldn't grant him his wish of being master. He did everything he had to do, including killing Jedi, trying to kill Obi-Wan, and even killing Padawans, the children, which he didn't want to do. He cried and showed emotions, but did it all for Padme, but killed her in anger. Then lived the rest of his life continuing on killing Jedi, since he blamed them for starting all of this, and lived in an uncomfortable suit that made him feel constant pain and itchiness, with robotic limbs and fake skin all fueled by anger. Story 7, I wouldn't call him a supervillain, more an antagonist. But Squidward just wants to live his life and be a responsible adult. He's let go of his childhood years ago, and SpongeBob just gets in the way of him attaining his goals, that is, a relaxing weekend, a clean yard, a music and art career. I think Squidward is a perfect example of if you stare into the abyss stares back at you. Because the more he hangs with SpongeBob, the more he realizes he enjoys his, and in some situations depends on SpongeBob's friendship. Squidward is afraid or incapable of having a good time by SpongeBob's standards. And he's afraid that the more he hangs out with SpongeBob, the more he will see a side of SpongeBob in himself. Hence why he's always got emotional walls up reflected in several episodes where Squidward literally builds walls around his house to block out SpongeBob, his own fortress of solitude. Story 8. Zuko from Avatar. The dude was just seeking affirmation from his father. He wanted to redeem himself after being banished. Avatar has some of the best character development in any cartoon anime. Highly recommend it for those who haven't seen it. Edit. Yeah, sure, Zuko isn't really a supervillain in the end, but he was painted as the main antagonist in the first two books. That, in my opinion, is what makes it great. The writers, directors, and the entire team did a great job to show the humanity in Zuko. Doing this in a kids' show requires some resolve, which I can commend them for. Story 9, I think Captain Hook, if he could be considered a supervillain, would be logical. Supposedly, Peter Pan was psychopathic and would trap kids in Neverland and kill them when they became adults. Captain Hook supposedly escaped when Peter tried to kill him, and Peter missed and cut his arm off, and that is why he is missing an arm. Hook wasn't an ex-Lost Boy or anything like that. The book makes references to him having been a scholar before turning to piracy, and his entire goal in life is to have good form. He hates Pan, not because of Pan's lack of humanity, but because Pan has perfect form, without ever trying. Life and happiness come easily to him, while Hook struggles at every turn. Peter Pan isn't an insane murder hobo. He's just a kid who doesn't know a thing about consequence and never learned the difference between reality and make-believe. He kills Lost Boys when they get too old, cuts off chunks of them if they get too fat, sometimes joins the pirates mid-battle, and sometimes completely forgets everyone around him. He doesn't remember Tink or Hook after they die. He is his entire world, an entirely selfish butt that should be considered in the worst of form, and yet he's perfect, and Captain James Hook hates him for it. Peter also cut off Hook's hand, which is just extra salt in the wound. Story 10, I've seen it said before, but Lex Luthor, genius, epitome of health, a general paragon of the human race whose only concern is that we advance and evolve. Some alien Superboy shows up and undermines all of what it is to be human and work hard, because the sun happens to be yellow, and he's the bad guy. Meanwhile, everyone's getting lazy and irresponsible, because some guy with an S on his chest can save them, so why bother? Despite the fact that half the problems the planet faces happens because intergalactic threats come to Earth to kill him. Story 11. This is a bit niche, but Emmett Selch from Final Fantasy XIV, eons ago, his entire civilization was destroyed, and reality was torn asunder into fragments. Only him and a few others survived, and they vowed to restore the world to the way it was and revive their civilization. Of course, in order to do so, they have to sacrifice the current world and everyone in it. Additionally, his kind were immortal and extremely powerful, and see the current world's sentient being as little more than animals. So to them, killing everyone is the moral equivalent of destroying an anthill. It's really interesting because in the game there's a really long time where the motive of the baddies seems inscrutable, and they seem to just be evil for evil's sake. And then it's revealed that they really just want to bring their friends back and be heroes to their own civilization. Story 12. Handsome Jack from Borderlands 2. He only wanted peace and order on Pandora, and the only way he could do that was by getting rid of the bandits and cleaning up the entire planet. He was also betrayed by the people who later killed him in the past and led him to go somewhat crazy, but he had a good reason to do what he did. A lot of people prefer to think of him as a narcissistic bastard that wanted to rule a planet. But those people ignore the fact that he was a good guy at first and became a bad guy only after the bandits betrayed him. He wanted to save Pandora from the moon, and they betrayed him after he saved their bottoms. Not only that, but messed up his face and turned him into a genocidal madman. Even after losing his trust in pretty much everyone, he still was good to his girlfriend and his best friend. Also in Tales from the Borderlands, he shows that he actually cared about Angel as a father, and that he is sorry she has to throw all that to accomplish his objective. Story 13. Loki, Norse mythology, not Marvel. Of course, there are many different branches and versions to mythology and the stories within them. But when I learned Norse myth, Loki was lied to and taken advantage of by Odin, who killed his best friends so he could have greater knowledge. And the other Aesir, Loki was basically used and abused as a tool. At the start, Loki tried to help them, which is how Asgard got built. Sleipnir was conceived and given to Odin. Thor got his hammer and his wife got a golden wig. Loki brought gifts to the Aesir and only got scorn in return. Eventually, he got pissed and started lashing out at the Aesir, and he just grew bitter against them. Sure, Loki has faults, but I highly doubt he deserved to be tied to a rock under a poison-dripping snake until Ragnarok. Side note, I know that this may differ from what others believe. As there are many versions of ancient religions, it is hard to find the most accurate. This was simply from the first version I learned. So please, if you believe or learn something different, take my opinion with a grain of salt. Story 14. Knox from Wakfu. His entire goal is to travel back in time to save his family from a hurricane that flooded their island. To do this, he needs to collect Wakfu from enough living beings to power his time machine. Sure, to get the energy he needs to kill people, but if his plan works, then he'll have undone all of the damage while also getting his family back. So everyone lives happily ever after. If he fails, then he'll accept whatever punishment he deserves because he'll want to die at that point anyway. Here's the thing. Despite everyone telling him that it's impossible, despite the god of time itself telling Knox that not even he can travel back in time, despite all of that, Knox's plan works. He kills off the last civilization, adds their Wakfu to his time machine, and he goes back in by 20 minutes, just enough to undo his most recent transgression. He spent 200 years collecting Wakfu for a measly 20-minute rewind. Story 15. Spini. She was abandoned in a garden for 6,000 years. I don't know if she counts as a supervillain, but she did try to wipe Steven's friends' memories, so Steven would die alone in a barren world. But that was because Pink Diamond abandoned her when she just wanted to be a friend. Plus 6,000 years. Imagine someone telling their dog to stay in a cage and then never letting them out. And then they finally get out after just to find out their owner abandoned them. The dog would have some serious trust issues. Story 16. Raz Al Ghul. The man just wanted to help people and save the wrong guy. After witnessing his wife get murdered, getting betrayed, and then crammed in a cage with his wife's corpse and tortured. Fast forward hundreds of years later, with the help of some unstable life juice, and Raz has amassed an organization to bring justice to the world, while earning the mutual respect of even some of his enemies. After realizing his unstable life juice, the Lazarus Pits, is making him gradually lose his mind, he repeatedly tries to entrust all of his power and possessions to his greatest and most respected enemy, Batman. Of course, this comes with the condition that Batman would have to start actually killing criminals. But honestly, that seems like more than fair trade. I get to show mercy to the misguided and try to help the mentally ill. And I think that should still be practiced. However, when sending mass-ending villains to be imprisoned becomes the equivalent of a minor inconvenience for, I think you need to start taking preemptive security measures. Story 17. Owlman. From the alternate reality of the Justice League. He's basically the evil version of Batman, because there is a parallel world created for every decision you make and don't make it. Doesn't matter what you choose to do, because in a different reality you chose to do the opposite. But Owlman discovers Earth Prime, the original Earth. If you destroy that, then all of reality will be destroyed. So his reason to destroy the original Earth is because it is the only choice anyone could ever make that would actually matter. Story 18. Morgana from the TV show Merlin. All she wanted was a fair and just kingdom accepting of magic. After years of watching King Uther cast away sorcery, while she is sorcerer, he lies and tells her he cares about her, but refuses to listen to her when she says that he's doing the wrong thing by killing innocent people, even working with sorcerers. The whole point of her villainous rise was for sorcerers and magic to finally get the freedom, power, and respect they deserve from a frightened, hypocritical king who chose to murder and use magic for his own good. Story 19. General Zod from Superman 1 or 2. He's charged with treason, but we never hear his side, and we gradually learn how sick and evil Kryptonian society is. At trial, the accused have no rights, no defense lawyer, and are put on display like animals. Barbaric Kryptonians believe being tortured for infinity is a perfectly ethical punitive measure. Krypton is so staunchly hereditarian and classist that upper crusters literally wear their family symbol on their chest every day. Krypton is so fascistic and anti-science that Jor-El is blacklisted immediately for defying government ignorance, coming environmental disaster. In fact, they threatened to charge him with treason just for speaking the truth. So we must wonder if Zod was doing anything wrong at all. Or, if he was, perhaps he was actually 100% in the moral right, and the terrible, horrible Krypton society punished him for doing the right thing. After all, Krypton's authorities blithely lead it to its doom and prevent anyone from leaving to save their lives. Story 20. Thanos from the Avengers movie. Many considered him a villain just because the heroes said so and because they didn't like the way he actually did things. But really, he was just trying to save the universe. His planet was overpopulated, and that led to its downfall, so he spent the rest of his life wiping out half of all life to save the other half from dying and going at all costs to save as many planets as possible, no matter what. Which, in a different perspective, makes him a savior god. Because most of, not all gods, in all religions kill of toms of people to save the rest, and that's what Thanos does. And he doesn't purposely seek war and to fight people. He just wants to get the stones and save the universe, then retire. After Infinity War, he just sits at peace in his cottage and doesn't seek fights and wars, and doesn't use the stones for his own personal greeds. He destroyed them so no one else can do harm. So he would have made a really great hero. If put in a difference, there's also many theories that Thanos might have even been worthy to lift and use Thor's hammer Mjolnir because he was willing to sacrifice anything to save others for the greater good. So like, He was really the only good guy all along in the film sequel. Story 21, Eric Killmonger from Black Panther, the movie. Not only do I think it's easy to sympathize with him, but I believe he is the only supervillain that is realistic in our world. A kid who is orphaned after his royal uncle kills his father. He grows up in a world where blacks are treated unfairly, while he knows there is a rich kingdom in Africa that has the resources to make things right, but refuses to get involved and help out their people. Kid joins the army and seeks revenge on his family, and will take the keys himself to save his people. Bury me in the ocean with my ancestors who jumped from ships, because they knew death was better than bondage. Story 22. Loki in the MCU. His original intentions were to point out that Thor was not ready for the throne, and he was right. He didn't actually want it for himself. Odin messed up by lying to him his entire life, instead of telling him from the beginning that he was a frost giant, but that they loved him anyway. He was bullied for using magic, using his brains in a warrior culture, and probably spent his life as Thor's annoying little brother, tagging along with him and his friends. He was appointed to the throne, and his subjects immediately committed treason because they liked Thor better. Loki's plan seems to have been to lure Laufey to Asgard, kill him, prove his worthiness to Odin, now that Thor isn't there to steal his thunder. Thor comes home, but he never had the chance. Yes, sending the giant robot thing to Earth was a bad move, but I think he sensed things sliding out of control and was trying to delay Thor from messing up his plan. There's also evidence he may have been under mind control from Thanos when he went to invade Earth. I could write essays. Story 23, Dr. Evil. The details of my life are quite inconsequential. Very well, where do I begin? My father was a relentlessly self-improving boulangerie owner from Belgium with low-grade narcolepsy and a penchant for buggery. My mother was a 15-year-old French easy girl named Chloe with webbed feet. My father would womanize, he would drink. He would make outrageous claims like he invented the question mark. Sometimes he would accuse chestnuts of being lazy, the sort of general malaise that only the genius possesses and the insane lament. My childhood was typical. Summers in Rangoon, luge lessons. In the spring, we'd make meat helmets. When I was insolent, I was placed in a burlap bag and beaten with reeds. Pretty standard, really. At the age of 12, I received my first scribe. At the age of 14, a Zoroastrian named Vilma ritualistically shaved my testicle. There really is nothing like a shorn scrotum. It's breathtaking. I highly suggest you try it. Story 24, the evil queen Regina from Once Upon a Time. Initially, she comes off as wicked and conniving, but the more her backstory is revealed in the first season, the more you come to understand why she slowly descended into madness. Her mother never appreciated her for who she was and killed the love of her life so Regina could marry into power. Then Regina was branded as a villain because people were afraid of her, couldn't get people to trust her, was framed on numerous occasions, and was easily manipulated by her mother. Don't get me wrong, she definitely does enough to earn the title of Evil Queen throughout the series, but all she really wanted was love and to be loved for who she was, and that is such a human thing. Story 25, Dr. Doofenshmirtz. First, his parents failed to show up for his birth. Then, they made him wear frilly dresses. When the family's garden gnomes were repossessed, Dr. Doof's dad made him stand outside all night to protect the garden. His only friend was the moon, and his pet balloon, Balloony. But then, Balloony flew away. Then Dr. Doof spent his entire year's allowance, one 3-cent coin, on a teddy bear for his mother. His mom turned around and gave the teddy bear to Roger, who produced a big red marker and wrote his name on the bear and the mom, claiming them both as his own. Also, his mother's love was always inexplicably linked to kickball, and his brother was an at the start. The man had it rough. Story 26, Dostoevsky, from Bungo Stray Dogs. He was persecuted and sent to the gulag for having a special ability. His life was absolutely ruined, all because he had powers that scared other people. So his goal of get rid of all special abilities and make everyone into normal humans at least makes sense, even if he's manipulating and killing a lot of people to do that. Also, Maury's utilitarian view on the mafia makes some sense. He's clearly evil and presented as such, but his stance is, at least with me running the mafia, I can keep out troublemakers and other groups who would try to outright destroy the city. He's just willing to murder a small number of people to keep the majority of the city happy and running smoothly.